They might not be suitable, but they might well be suitable. That they know their way around your back doors, basically. So why don't you hire them to fix your back doors, to close your back doors?
This is the type of, in some cases, sorry to deviate towards something else, but what I heard about was the fact that Microsoft likes to hire people who used to be against them. This would be things like lobbyists, or it would be things like lawyers. So if you're a lawyer who's been through the trash cans of Microsoft, seen all the dirty secrets and things like that, they might as well hire you, because once they do that, they get to pay you. And then you probably won't do things again.
And then they get to put you under their employee agreement that says you can't talk about any of that for lawyers.
Yeah, actually, I was pretty disappointed. There is one person, that don't want to mention his name, he's a lawyer who was very active in promoting open document format. And he was hired by Microsoft to do some consulting job. And ever since, he doesn't say anything negative about Microsoft anymore.
He's not allowed to for lawyers.
Maybe he's not allowed to, but he's a different person now, because he was paid by them. For consulting or whatever, help us out and tell us how to improve, that thing. And apparently that's quite a normal pattern, maybe in all kinds of companies. I hear in Nigeria, for example, companies to do with oil would hire the activists who work against the oil companies and basically try to pick up the leaders, and then the people who are actually active against these companies, the pollution of the waters, for example, they would have no leaders, and they would just kind of dissipate.
There's something to be said for if you can't beat them, buy them. But
yeah.
Did we lose Tim?
Yeah, we did. I presume we're trying to get him back. That's what happens when you're on Wi-Fi. I don't use Wi-Fi. I could be smug.
Hey, I'm on Wi-Fi. I don't have these problems.
Well, you might have different problems. Actually, I disabled the Wi-Fi on my router as soon as I got it.
Well, okay. Here's the thing: y'all have RJ45 running through your houses for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, we don't. We have RJ12, which means I can either go buy a bunch of CAD5 or CAD6 cable and cable my house, or I can use Wi-Fi.
Yeah. It depends also. One of the things I have to do, and people probably know that, I have to track IRC channels and to log them all the time. So even 1 minute offline means I have to go to a backup server and try to merge things. So I really have to have something very persistent throughout the day.
Oh yeah, no. Oh no, but my primary desktop is on a CAD cable, because it just makes sense for it to be on the RJ45 Ethernet cable. But
yeah, since we're getting off topic a little bit, I've just installed XFCE, Debian Linux Mint XFCE. XFCE 4.8 is incredible. It's really nice. If people haven't checked out XFCE in a while, 4.8 is beautiful. It really is. So since we were getting off topic a little bit, I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite concerned about Canonical. One thing that occurred to me today, and I actually had two topics, so I'll address the first one very briefly. The issue I've always been worried about is if we have one main distribution, we basically have as a flag carrier for the desktop, at least. That used to be Ubuntu since around 2005 or 6 or whatever. Every mistake they make could do a lot of damage to the collective of Linux users. Now you might say, well, if Canonical screws up, people will move to a different distro. But it's really they kind of, I wouldn't say destroy, but people who used to work in Mandriva, they would blame Canonical for taking all the users. And that hurts the other companies. They basically kind of drive them out of business.
Well, it's not just that. Unfortunately for Linux, this is one of the reasons I am not a Canonical Ubuntu fan. And I don't like to talk about this because I will get nothing but flack for saying it. But
so it's okay.
From a public standpoint, way too many people associate Ubuntu and what Canonical is doing is the end all of Linux. So when Ubuntu screws something up, People just assume Linux has screwed it up. I'm like, no, Canonical screwed it up. Linux can handle this just fine.
Yeah. In fact, Linux doesn't get many contributions from Canonical, at least not the upstream Linux kernel. But one of the so I've already seen some trolls using the you could call it a bit of a exodus, or many versions to people. Some trolls try to use it against Linux, to say it's.
Yeah, so call this self-promotion if you like, but it's probably a good topic to discuss since we're sort of heading that direction anyway. The latest blog post I did was about consistency, and it's the idea that if you, one of the elements that people sell Linux on is the fact that you can upgrade in your own terms. You don't have to retrain on Microsoft's terms, Microsoft cutting off support for Office XP or whatever, or Windows XP or, whatever it is, and you've got to upgrade, you've got to pay, you've got to take all the downtime, whatever, that you upgrade on your own terms. Now, with the whole GNOME 3 and Unity thing, it's forcing people to decide that you either retrain, you have to retrain anyway, whether it's retraining to the fallback of GNOME 3 or Unity or switching distributions and going to a different GNOME 3 distribution with GNOME Shell, or switching to XFCE or KDE or whatever it is, you're forced to retrain anyway, which is kind of one of the arguments for using Linux in the first place, is that you're not forced to retrain, you're not forced to switch. And I just thought that this whole Unity and GNOME 3 thing was a bit of it's taken away one of the aces in our pack, basically, for advocating Linux, is that you don't have to switch. And, well, lo and behold, yes, you do have to switch.
In theory, that's true, but in practice, I found you still have some forced upgrading even in Linux. I mean, a perfect example of that is KDE 3 versus KDE 4. If you're using the KDE environment, when that transition happened, you had to sit down and learn KDE 4. You just did, because going forward, more and more software was not going to be for KDE 3, was going to be for KDE 4. You were either going to have to switch desktops or learn to embrace the widgetiness of KDE 4. Yeah. Personally, I didn't mind, and it wasn't such an oh dear God transition. But if you had just gotten started with KDE 3 when that happened, it could have been intimidating, especially on.
Not, I have 2 points against that. The first thing is, if a person had begun with KDE 3, the person should be able to wait a couple of years before being kind of pushed to move to KDE 4, because lots of distributions would not adopt it until around 2010 or 2009, even though it had been available for quite a few years. The second thing is, when you use the term force upgrades, I think lots of people talk about this in context of price, saying, well, the company is going to force you to buy the same thing again, just for you to get a different version or to get something that's newer, something that works with certain features. But in Linux, we don't have to pay for upgrades, and even when you do have to kind of be forced to do an upgrade, it's usually very it's supposed to be very smooth. It's supposed to be just a case of transition.
It's usually very smooth. Where it gets to be an issue, especially if you're a business or in any kind of enterprise thing, there is that time and energy to retrain people and go, okay, now this works this way. This is now that. You call everybody into the conference room and you go, okay, here are the 10 things you need to know. But that is time out of your day and so.
Can you give an example? Sorry, an example that applies to Linux where you really, because I don't think things change dramatically. Even if you have to move now from Firefox 1.5 to 3.5.
Things like that, not so much. I'm talking about, like, if you were on a distro that was using KDE 3 in like October of 2009, and then it began its transition to KDE 4 in February of 2010. There's enough of a difference in the general UI and nature of how KDE 3 versus KDE 4 works
can you give an example of something that's changed and cannot be reversed manually? Because as far as I can tell, I could make my KDE 4 desktop behave and look just about the same as KDE 3.